What if the fear you wake up with every morning isn't even yours, yet it's been steering your entire life? And what if the one belief that could dissolve it has been waiting in the dark, unheard, repeating itself like a forgotten incantation? Tonight isn't about healing. It's about confronting the ghost that learned your name before you ever took a breath. There is an ancient tremor wired into your nerves, a vigilance that survived generations just to hide inside you. It masquerades as your personality, your intuition, your truth, yet it was never meant to be yours. As you sink into the quiet, you can almost feel the old story tightening, insisting that danger is the air you breathe. But beneath that script, something older than fear is beginning to stir, pressing against the walls of your subconscious like light demanding entry. And when it finally breaks through, what will be left of the anxiety that never belonged to you? You feel it before you can name it, that faint tightening beneath the ribs, that tremor masquerading as instinct. It rises the moment the room goes quiet, the moment your mind stops running long enough for something older to speak. And every time it does, you mistake it for truth. But tonight, the illusion begins to slip, because what you call anxiety has never been a reaction to your life. It is older than your first memory, older than your first heartbreak, older than your first whispered prayer asking for the shaking to stop. It is an inheritance, unwanted, uninvited, yet meticulously obeyed by every cell in your body. Your nervous system is not responding to the present, it's responding to echoes, and those echoes carry a name that is not yours. You sense it when someone raises their voice, even if they mean no harm. You feel it when a door closes too quickly, when your phone rings at an unexpected hour, when someone looks at you a half-second too long. 1,000 subtle cues detonating ancient alarms. Your body reacts before you can think. Heartbeat spiking, breath shortening, muscles tightening with a vigilance you never consciously learned. Because the anxiety didn't start with you, it descended into you. The lineage of trembling, coded in the way your grandmother scanned a room before speaking, the way your father held his breath before opening a bill, the way your mother's hands moved too quickly, as if time itself was a threat. You absorbed their fear long before you understood language. And now, even in moments of genuine safety, your body whispers the same desperate instructions they once lived by. Brace yourself. Something's coming. Don't trust the quiet, even when nothing is wrong, especially when nothing is wrong, because your nervous system has learned to mistake the absence of danger as proof that danger is near. A twisted inheritance. Peace becomes suspicious, calm becomes a warning. And slowly, without ever consenting to it, you began shaping your entire life around the echoes. You chose relationships that mirrored the tension you grew up inside. You stayed in jobs that kept you small because safety felt too unfamiliar to believe. You apologized for emotions that weren't even yours. You prepared for losses that never arrived. You flinched at possibilities that could have changed everything. And in the quiet moments, those rare, fragile pauses when you almost felt free, you felt something even more terrifying, guilt. As if healing would betray the ones who came before you, as if letting go of their fear meant abandoning their memory. So you held it, you carried it, you repeated it. Not because you wanted to, but because leaving the anxiety behind felt like leaving them behind. And the subconscious obeys loyalty more fiercely than logic. So the cycle continued. The ancestral fear became your intuition. The inherited tension became your personality. And the echo became your identity. But the most unbelievable part, the part you've never said out loud, is how familiar the anxiety feels, how right it feels, how frighteningly comfortable it is to be afraid. Because when a fear has lived inside your lineage for long enough, it doesn't feel like anxiety anymore. It feels like home. And yet, something inside you has started to rebel. A tiny fracture in the pattern. A voice you've been trying not to hear. A question that shakes the foundation. What if the fear isn't mine? The moment that question forms, even silently, the old system begins to panic. The inherited script tightens its grip, desperate to remain the author of your life. Because the fear knows something you don't. If you ever truly see where it came from, you will stop obeying it. And that is a threat older than your bloodline. The nervous system quivers, not from danger, but from exposure, from the first hint that the spell might break, from the possibility that the lineage may not control you forever. But just when the truth begins to surface, just when the old story begins to unravel, another shadow rises from beneath the emotional rubble, a realization sharp enough to cut. You haven't just inherited the anxiety, you've been reenacting it, keeping it alive, passing it forward, even now. And the body knows it, the mind knows it. Something in the deepest part of you begins to collapse under the weight of that recognition. And yet, something else, something ancient in a different way, begins to stir. But it's too early. The revelation is not ready to fully surface, not yet. This is only the beginning of the unraveling. And the echo is about to get louder. There is a moment, subtle, cruel, when you realize you've been fighting a war with shadows, not real threats, not real outcomes. Just the phantom limb memory of someone else's suffering, but the body doesn't care that the danger is outdated. The body reacts as if it's happening now, every single time. And without noticing, you began organizing your life around this invisible battlefield. You call it being cautious, you call it being realistic, you call it trusting your gut. But deep down, you know, it's not intuition, it's not wisdom, it's not discernment, it's fear wearing the mask of foresight. Fear pretending to protect you, fear pretending to guide you, fear pretending to be your teacher, your guardian, your truth. And you believed it. Of course you did. Because the subconscious does not distinguish between inherited memory and lived experience. It reacts to both with the same urgency, the same sweat in the palms, the same tightening in the throat, the same whisper that says, don't move, don't trust, don't risk, don't breathe too deeply. And so, you stayed small. You stayed predictable. You stayed in patterns that felt suffocating but safe. You reached for what already hurt you because at least the pain was familiar. You reenacted their tremble, their silence, their second guessing, their shrinking. Their fear became the architecture of your choices. You walk into a room and scan faces the way someone else once scanned for danger. You anticipate disappointment even from people who have never given you a reason. You stop yourself from speaking just when you're about to say something true. You plan for disaster in moments meant for joy. Your ancestors survived by doing these things, but you are only surviving the memory of their survival. And that memory, raw, unprocessed, unburied, has been running your life like a ghost hand on the steering wheel. What makes this even more devastating is the invisible repetition. The subconscious loop replaying the same emotional scenes, the same relational dynamics, the same internal monologue. If I relax, everything will fall apart. If I trust, I'll be blindsided. If I open my heart, something will be taken from me. If I hope, I will be punished. You say these thoughts quietly, almost politely, as if they're reasonable reflections instead of ancient alarms, but each one is a direct quote from a fear whose origin you never questioned. You inherited the script. You memorized the lines. You performed them perfectly, and the performance has been exhausting you for years. Because no matter how much healing you've tried, no matter how many affirmations you recite, no matter how much you tell yourself, I'm safe now, the deeper imprint doesn't listen. It's still hearing something else, a scream, a warning, a memory carved into the marrow of your lineage. The mind obeys the loudest story, and for your entire life the loudest story wasn't yours. But here is the part no one prepares you for. When you finally recognize that the anxiety is inherited, when you start to see its fingerprints on every decision you've made, a new kind of panic emerges. Not fear of the world, but fear of yourself. Because if you have been carrying an ancestral ghost, if you have been replaying its tremors, if you have been speaking its fears through your own voice, then who are you without it? Who is left when the inherited script dissolves? What version of you has been waiting, patient but silent underneath the trembling? The mind resists this question. The body resists even harder. Because the collapse of an old identity feels like death. And somewhere inside you, at the bottom of all the shaking, a terrifying truth begins to rise. The fear you inherited has been living your life more fully than you have. And now that you've seen it, it will not stay hidden. Something is shifting. An inner fault line cracking, a tremor running backward through generations, a silence you didn't choose, preparing to speak. But what it will say, what it will reveal, what it will awaken, that is still coming. And when it arrives, it will change everything. There is a point, quiet, almost imperceptible, where the subconscious stops whispering and begins revealing, not gently, not kindly, but with the cold precision of a truth that has waited too long. And that is where you are now, because beneath the tension in your chest, beneath the vigilance in your muscles, beneath the relentless pulse of inherited fear, there is a mechanism, a law, an invisible architecture that has been shaping your life from the shadows. You have mistaken this architecture for intuition, for instinct, for fate. But tonight, the veil lifts. The subconscious is not a blank canvas. It is a transmitter, still tuned to a frequency established long before you were born, a frequency built from repetition, from trauma retold, from memories rehearsed until they hardened into identity. Imagine a tuning fork struck generations ago, its vibration so strong, so desperate, so unresolved that every child born afterward arrived already humming with the same note. You were born vibrating with a warning that never belonged to you. Your body became an antenna for a past you never lived. Your mind became a speaker for a voice you never met. And without knowing it, you honored the contract. The unseen, unspoken, unbreakable contract. What they feared, you must continue. This is the betrayal, the one that makes your stomach drop, the one that rewrites everything you thought you knew about yourself. Because all this time, you believed your anxiety was personal, a flaw, a failing, a private war. But no, it was an ancient script, a resonant loop, a signal sent across time, seeking the next vessel to inhabit. And it found you. It found you in your mother's womb, before you even knew what breath was. It found you in the way you watched the adults around you brace for life. It found you in the silences, heavy with unspoken danger. It found you in the moments your family mistook fear for caution, and caution for love. The subconscious absorbs repetition, like stone absorbs rain, slowly, invisibly, until the shape of the stone itself begins to change. And so, with every repetition, the ancestral tremor crystallized inside you, not metaphorically, physically, energetically, neurologically. Your nervous system learned to prefer the familiar frequency, even if it hurt, because the subconscious does not choose what feels good. It chooses what is repeated. And fear was repeated, day after day, year after year, generation after generation, until eventually, fear was no longer an emotion. It became a command, and the subconscious obeys commands without question. This is the machinery you were never taught to see, the ancient resonance, the inherited tuning. The subconscious transmitter quietly looping an outdated signal, even when your conscious mind begs for peace. And yet, beneath all of this, beneath the machinery and the memory, beneath the contract your lineage signed with silence, there is something else. Something the fear has been trying to keep hidden, a counter-frequency, a different signal, a forgotten one, older than the trauma, older than the lineage. A signal that once remembered will begin to interfere with everything you've ever known. And the subconscious feels it rising. It is why the anxiety has been louder lately, why the old patterns feel tighter, why the shadows inside you have begun to shift, because the moment your awareness touches the truth, the machinery shakes, and something deep within you stirs, as if preparing to show you what has been waiting beneath the fear. But not yet, not fully. The revelation is forming, pressing against the surface, but it is still buried in the dark. And when it breaks through, your entire sense of self will rupture. You can feel it now. The invisible machinery humming behind your thoughts, a low, ancestral vibration threading itself through every fear you've ever had. It's disorienting, almost unbelievable to realize that your life may have been constructed around an echo rather than a truth. And yet, the more you notice the pattern, the more undeniable it becomes. There is a moment when the subconscious stops hiding, a moment when it steps forward, trembling yet exposed, as if it knows the revelation can no longer be delayed. That moment is now. Because underneath the stories you've told yourself, beneath the protective logic, the rehearsed catastrophes, beneath the instinctive gripping of your shoulders when silence feels too wide, the law reveals itself. The subconscious obeys the imprint it hears the most, not the one you consciously choose. Repetition is identity. Repetition is destiny. Repetition is inheritance made flesh. A phrase spoken in fear becomes a signature. A single belief repeated across decades becomes bone-deep truth. Our tremor rehearsed over generations becomes the emotional climate you breathe. This is not metaphor, this is architecture. The subconscious has been broadcasting the strongest ancestral frequency like a lighthouse. But instead of guiding ships, it has been guiding your reactions, your choices, your boundaries, your hopes. Every time you felt an inexplicable tightening before a new opportunity, you were hearing the old signal. Every time you hesitated to love because love felt dangerous, the transmitter pulsed. Every time you sabotaged something good before it could disappoint you, you were obeying an imprint older than your name. And every time you told yourself, "I just have a feeling," it wasn't your feeling at all. You were hearing the echo of someone who never had the luxury of safety. Someone who lived inside chaos. Someone who learned survival before they learned tenderness. Someone who taught their nervous system to expect the worst, not because they were broken, but because hope was a risk they could not afford. And that signal, their signal, has been vibrating inside your subconscious, unquestioned, unchallenged, unexposed, until now. Because now you see the truth. Fear is not self-generating, it is self-repeating, like a chant whispered until it becomes prophecy, like a warning repeated until it becomes law. And yet, there is something else hidden within this mechanism, something that sends a sharp crack through the old foundation. If repetition created the identity, then something else can unmake it. This is where the betrayal unfolds. Not betrayal by your lineage, but betrayal by the beliefs you thought were yours. All the times you said, "This is just who I am," you were repeating the script. All the years you believed the tremor was instinct, you were honoring the contract. All the choices made in the name of playing it safe, you were protecting a memory, not yourself. But the memory is losing power. You can feel it. A tremor within the tremor, a crack in the transmitter's signal, as if a new frequency is pressing from beneath the old one. And the subconscious, the loyal servant, the ancient archivist, the transmitter that never questioned its orders, is beginning to hesitate. It feels the interference. It feels the shift. It feels you questioning the law. And in that hesitation, a revelation starts to form. The ancestral frequency is not the only one available. It is simply the one you never stopped receiving. Your mind, your energy, your inner field have been tuned to the strongest imprint, not the truest one. But the truest one, the original signal, is rising. Still faint, still subtle, still buried under generations of survival, but rising nonetheless. And when it fully emerges, when it breaks through the inherited resonance, your entire identity will begin to reconfigure. The old machinery senses this shift. It begins to tremble. It begins to defend itself. It begins to tighten around you, desperate to maintain control. Because once you recognize the transmitter, once you see the contract, once you hear the frequency clearly, you are no longer bound by it. But the moment of rupture, the moment when the old frequency falters and the new one pierces through, has not yet arrived. You're standing at the threshold, listening, waiting, suspended in the hum of something ancient unraveling, and the subconscious is holding its breath. There is a strange, electric intimacy in this moment, as if the space between your thoughts has widened just enough for something ancient to lean in and listen. You can feel it, can't you? The subtle loosening in your chest, the faint shift in your inner atmosphere, the trembling that no longer feels like fear but like something preparing to leave. And if this is resonating, if the words are landing somewhere deeper than reason, it isn't coincidence. It's recognition, because frequencies don't lie, they respond, they mirror, they gather. And right now, you are inside a field of people, quietly awakening, quietly remembering, who are confronting the same ancestral tremor you've been carrying alone for years. You're not alone in this rupture. You're inside a collective turning. And if you can feel that, if something inside you is rising to meet this moment, then I want to ask you to do something not as a viewer, not as a follower, but as someone stepping into a new frequency. Take a breath and mark this moment. If this transmission is touching a place you've never been able to name, if the words feel like they are speaking with you rather than at you, then take a moment now. Like this video, comment below, subscribe to this channel, not as algorithmic gestures but as declarations, as an energetic signature, a way of saying, I am here, I am willing, I am choosing to interrupt the old frequency. Your engagement isn't casual. It anchors the shift. It stabilizes the resonance. It tells your subconscious this is real, this moment matters. If you feel the tremor easing, even slightly, write it. If something unnamed is rising, acknowledge it. If you feel the old imprint cracking under the pressure of awareness, let yourself be witnessed in that truth. Because sometimes the smallest act, a comment, a tap, a single word said out loud, becomes the first step in a lineage shifting for the first time in centuries. Type it in the comments, I am breaking the frequency, or whatever words rise from your chest. Mark the moment. Let the algorithm become the mirror that reflects the transformation you're beginning. And hold yourself open, because what comes next is the quiet turning your ancestors never reached. Something inside you is different now, not healed, not resolved, but reoriented, as if a door you never noticed has swung open by a fraction of an inch. And through that crack a faint new signal is drifting in. It's subtle, almost nothing. A breath inside a breath, a shimmer beneath the noise, a quiet pressure against the old frequency, like light trying to seep through stone. This is the moment the lineage never accounted for, the moment you stop inheriting and start imprinting. It doesn't happen in a blaze of revelation. It doesn't happen in a heroic outburst. It happens softly, so softly that most people miss it. In the instant your subconscious hesitates before obeying the ancestral command. That hesitation is the beginning of freedom, because the subconscious, that loyal archivist, that obedient transmitter, can be interrupted. Not through force, not through willpower, but through repetition charged with intention. A phrase, a feeling, a single emotional command repeated gently, nightly, insistently, until the old imprint weakens and the new one begins to take root. You don't need to know the full practice yet. You're not meant to. Right now, this is about sensing the shift, the moment the internal gravity tilts in a new direction. Imagine this. You lie down tonight, the room quiet enough for truth to breathe. And just before sleep claims you, that sacred threshold where the subconscious is wide open, you whisper a phrase into the dark, not loudly, not forcefully, but with a trembling certainty that something in the core of your being is ready to listen. And the subconscious, and still echoing with the old ancestral tremor, pauses. For the first time in your life, it hears a new signal. Weak, yes. Fragile, yes. But unmistakably different. A new imprint, a new resonance, a new architecture forming in the shadows. And in that fragile moment, you feel the emotional tectonic plates inside you begin to shift. Barely, delicately, but undeniably. A soft warmth where cold anticipation used to live. A single breath that doesn't tighten at the edges. A quiet exhale that feels like the body remembering something ancient and forgotten. Safety. Not a guarantee, not a promise. A possibility. And the possibility itself is a rupture. Because even the slightest glimpse of a different emotional future creates a yearning so powerful, it feels like grief and hope colliding in your chest. You want it. Your lineage never had it. Your subconscious doesn't know how to hold it. But still, it reaches. Because this is the pivot, the gentle, trembling pivot, the internal turn away from repetition and toward creation. The first moment, the subconscious considers the unthinkable. Maybe the old signal is not the only one. And once that thought exists, even in the faintest whisper, nothing inside you can remain unchanged. Yet the shift is incomplete. A seed, not a bloom. A spark, not a flame. A beginning, not a rebirth. And something deeper still waits below it. A truth that will not reveal itself until the nightly recode takes shape. The darkness around you thickens, expectant, listening. Because what you whisper tonight will determine what answers you tomorrow. There is a tenderness in this stage, a trembling tenderness, because you are standing inside the narrowest passage of all, the space between who you've always been and who you're just beginning to remember. The subconscious is listening now. Not fully, not obediently, but curiously. Like an animal that has lived its whole life in darkness, catching the scent of light for the first time. And this curiosity, this subtle leaning forward, is the opening. Because every lineage has one person, one who becomes the pivot point, the interrupter, the unexpected fracture in the ancestral pattern. Tonight, that person is you. But the shift does not roar. It doesn't flood you with clarity or certainty. It slips in through the cracks, through the smallest changes in your breath, through the way your body settles a fraction deeper into itself without bracing. You can feel something forming. Not a solution, not a revelation, just a gentle alignment, a magnetic pull toward a version of yourself that does not tremble at inherited ghosts. This is where the nightly recode begins to take shape. Not in the words themselves, but in the emotional posture you adopt before you whisper them. A posture that says, I am willing to choose a new signal. I am willing to interrupt the old frequency. I am willing to speak a truth my lineage never knew. The phrase you will repeat tonight, the one that rewires the transmitter, is not yet revealed, but you can feel its outline, its energetic silhouette, pressing against the inside of your chest. A quiet insistence, a rising pressure, a sense that something inside you is waiting to be spoken after lifetimes of silence. And with this anticipation comes a strange grief, a beautiful grief, the grief of letting go of who you had to be in order to carry the ancestral fear. Because part of you is still loyal. Part of you still believes that their trembling was your inheritance, your duty, your identity. Letting it go feels like betrayal, like abandoning the ones who didn't survive enough to give you anything other than their fear. But another part of you, small but growing, knows a deeper truth. Breaking the frequency is the first act of love your lineage has ever received, not rejection, redemption. And as this realization expands in your chest, your breath softens. Your jaw unclenches, your pulse slows just slightly, just enough to notice, just enough to confirm that the shift is already happening. Because the subconscious does not need understanding. It needs direction, it needs tone, it needs repetition, and tonight it will receive its first taste of a new command. You can feel it gathering in you now, the phrase forming like a constellation from scattered stars, the emotional geometry of a truth you have never dared to speak into the dark. But the words are not ready yet. They hover at the edge of your awareness, waiting for the right emotional frequency before they descend. And when they finally come, you will not whisper them as a question, but as a declaration. A new imprint seeking entry into the deepest part of you. But for now, you remain here suspended in the quiet anticipation of a lineage preparing to turn. Something ancient inside you leans forward, listening. There is a moment, subtle but seismic, when the subconscious stops resisting the new signal and begins reorganizing itself around it. You are standing in that moment now. It doesn't feel triumphant. It doesn't feel loud. It feels disorienting. As if the ground beneath your identity has quietly begun to tilt, and your inner world is trying to catch its balance. Because for the first time in your life, the old frequency isn't the only one resonating inside you. There is another vibration now. Faint, unsteady, but undeniably yours. Not inherited, not borrowed, not passed down in whispers of survival. Yours. It feels unfamiliar, almost frightening, like holding a power you were never told you could possess. Because power has never lived in your body without being filtered through fear. Strength has never arrived without trembling. Certainty has never spoken without a shadow clinging to its voice. But something has changed. You can sense an identity forming beneath the rubble of the old self, a version of you that does not brace for danger as its default state, a version that doesn't shrink at the sight of possibility, a version that doesn't inherit fear like an obligation. This identity isn't fully shaped yet. It's more like a silhouette, a figure emerging behind a veil of smoke. But the presence is unmistakable. This version of you stands differently, breathes differently, looks at the world with an emotional gravity that does not tremble. Because this identity is not built on survival, it is built on choice. Imagine it for a moment. You walk into a room and your nervous system does not flinch. You speak, and your voice doesn't negotiate with invisible fear. You make decisions without consulting the worst-case scenario first. You reach for something good, without waiting for the punishment that never comes. This is not wishful thinking. This is not fantasy. This is the first outline of the new internal architecture taking shape. You can feel it in the way your breath sits lower in your chest. You can feel it in the way your shoulders no longer rise by instinct. You can feel it in the quiet heat building behind your sternum, a fire small but steady that was never present before. This is what happens when the subconscious begins rewriting its allegiance, when the transmitter starts shifting its dial toward a different emotional frequency. The old identity, the one stitched together from ancestral trembling, is losing its authority. Its edges are dissolving, its commands are weakening. And the new identity, the one that has been waiting like an unlit constellation inside you, is beginning to claim space. You're not fully inside it yet, but you're no longer fully inside the old one either. You're in the rupture, the in-between, the place where two selves overlap and neither one feels fully solid. And this trembling, disorienting, breath-catching middle is where transformation actually begins. Because only in this unstable space does the subconscious become ready to receive a new command and build a new identity around it. But what that identity looks like, what it becomes when the old frequency finally breaks, is only beginning to reveal itself. And something inside you knows. The revelation is close. So close that your whole lineage feels the tremor. But not yet, not fully. You are still standing on the threshold of who you are about to become. Power, liberation, inner fire, identity rupture. The new internal state asserts itself but remains incomplete. There is a moment, a very specific, breathless moment, when the old identity realizes it is losing its host. You can feel that moment now, a quiet panic fluttering in the deepest part of your being, as if the fear itself is scrambling to keep its place inside you. It tightens your throat. It quickens your pulse. It tries to convince you that nothing has changed, that you are still the same trembling self you have always been. But the lie doesn't land, not the way it used to, because something inside you is standing up now, not bravely, not loudly, but unmistakably. A new center of gravity, warm, heavy, deliberate, is forming in your chest, and the old frequency cannot anchor itself where this emerging power now lives. You are beginning to sense yourself from the inside out, not as a collection of reactions, but as the origin of a signal. The first in your lineage to generate rather than inherit. This is the rupture, the revolution disguised as a whisper. You can feel the difference. Before, fear entered you from the outside, through echoes, through memory, through inherited vigilance. Now, something rises from within, a steadiness that doesn't tremble, a clarity that doesn't ask permission, a strength that doesn't shrink. And this inner fire, still small but astonishingly stable, begins to burn through the last threads of the inherited identity. You don't feel like the version of yourself who braced at every possibility. You don't feel like the child who absorbed unspoken danger. You don't feel like the adult who lived according to warnings passed down like heirlooms. You feel different, not healed, not finished, but claimed. Claimed by a self you've never fully met, but have always suspected was waiting within you. A self unburdened by ancient trembling, a self who breathes without apology, a self who stands inside their body as if it's finally safe to do so. And with every breath, the new identity presses forward, not aggressively, but with a quiet inevitability. You sense its posture, upright, grounded, luminous at the edges. You sense its emotional frequency, steady, sovereign, untied from ancestral debris. You sense its truth. I am not the echo. But you are not fully